So, what is that one advice that you would like to give to all the learners, space enthusiasts, youths, all out there who are watching this podcast? And
You can be in aerospace and part of the aerospace industry and work at the places that you want to work without going for a STEM degree. Is that there's the trifecta of your life's purpose is what you're passionate about. That's one of the things, right? And so we absolutely need that. And if you want to be, a cop in the aerospace industry, right? There are possibilities for that. Whether it's to stop being task doers and people need to stop being followers and waiting for the information and waiting for the opportunities. We have to create our own opportunities. If you think, aerospace medicine on koalas is super interesting, right? Do it. You will be the expert in studying koalas in aerospace because nobody has ever done it before. And that is something that is incredibly valuable and powerful and will make a name for yourself. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to say. My message is, go out, do it, become the expert in your field, no matter what it is.
Four, three, two, one, zero.
hello, everyone. Welcome to Space Science Podcast Series 3. So, I am 𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀 and I am on a vision and mission of connecting youth, connecting space enthusiasts to the scientists uh, to help them understand reshape their futures, as well as to have a better understanding and learning about space science and more than that. So today we have Miss Holly Pascal with us. She is the system engineer at NASA's headquarters and the founder of Women Aerospace Network, which is really a great opportunity for me to talk to her today. So, ma'am, how are you doing right now?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
That's great, ma'am. So this was the introduction I know from my end. So there is much more to know from your end. So we would like to know about your mindset, about the things which is not shown on LinkedIn or which we not know about you. So something which is interesting, something which you can share with us.
Wow, you go for the hard questions right away, I see. Love that. Okay, so one thing about me that many people don't know except my family is that I do not like spoons,
Oh,
using them as utensils. I'm partial to forks. Spoons, for some reason, I just don't vibe with them.
okay, that's quite different. First time I heard that. So that's also great to hear from you. So as being the founder of Women Aerospace Network, so it has come to a long way till present, and it is built on such a good foundation that I myself respect that network. And I was like really curious to know from you what actually led to you to what gap did you see in the society, particularly in the aerospace industry or space industry, which led to the formation of this network? And how are you going to, see this network in the upcoming 5 years from now on?
You are one with good questions. That's a very good question as well. All right, so a little bit
We'll
about
go
women's
one by
aerospace.
one, ma'am. Sorry.
All right. About Women's Aerospace Network, yeah, so we're still a relatively new organization. We're about a year and a quarter now, and we grew very fast, very quick. We had the Women's Space Awards when we were only about 6 weeks old, and I put it out on LinkedIn, not expecting too much. We only had a couple hundred followers, and 6 weeks later, we ended the awards out with 25,000 votes across 35 countries, almost 200 nominees. It was beautiful and insane and chaotic. At one point, my browser even crashed the night before. I mean, the entire website, our whole website crashed the night before Pam Melroy's nomination went out. At the time, she was the deputy administrator of NASA, and I had to call my dad. I said, "Dad, can you help?" And he's a web developer, and so he jumped right in and definitely helped us out there. But that's the long story of how Women's Aerospace Network originally started making its name. Honestly, we started as magazine and a podcast. And what I'm about to say next, not many people know, is that originally we started as a magazine. One day I had the thought and said, what if we had what if there was a magazine out there, just Women's Aerospace magazine? I thought that would be really cool and I wanted to buy one. And I Googled it and there wasn't one out there. So I decided to make one. Here. Oh, I don't know if you can
Oh,
see that while
that's
on Zoom.
great.
But yeah,
Actually,
but
I wrote an article for this magazine the last year.
oh, awesome. Awesome. Yes, and there's more opportunities coming up in the next one. Yeah. It's a really cool magazine. I didn't see one out there, so I was just like, "Oh, why don't I make one?" And I put it out on LinkedIn, the name Women's Aerospace Magazine, but also another page, Women's Aerospace Network. In my head at the time, it was network like Oprah's network, right? She has a magazine, she had many magazines, she has podcasts, that kind of network. And people interpret that as, oh, a network like community, people connecting each other. And I woke up the next morning and there was like 30 followers on that page. The next morning I woke up, there was like 80, the day after that, there was like 120. And I was like, what is going on? How are people even finding out about this? It kind of just took on its own. And that's what led us here today. We turned from a magazine to a network because we follow people's voices, we help fill the gap. And so the answer to your question of what do we do and what gaps do I see? And it's not necessarily this, grand big vision that I had. I was like, oh, let me start, the largest women's aerospace organization in the United States. We hit that in 6 months, but that was never my intention. My intention was just to follow the people, understand what gaps do they see, what messages are they resonating with, and how can we serve, how can we help the people? And that's what we do. That is who we are today, and that's what we derive everything from, even down to our values, to our 5-year vision. It all comes first from the people liking, commenting, sending us messages, just listening. It all comes from people like you and people listening to your podcast right now.
Yes. So that's really an insightful and motivating journey, which I really admire. So recently we saw 6 women going to space through Blue Origin. So what do you think? How is that creating a spark in women towards the space industry?
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, there's a lot of controversial thoughts
Yeah.
about it.
Yes.
And I think the most important question is, what are we going to do going forward? We have people going into space right now who are underrepresented, who have never been there before, and it's sparking all of this controversy, which isn't bad. That's how change happens. That's how people start asking the questions of what does this mean? How do we go forward next? It's how great publicity starts. It's how people start getting invested emotionally in the issues. And so this is my long answer of saying that despite how anybody feels, I'm incredibly glad that it is happening because it's making them feel something, right? This is how we start the conversation. If I something, right? 6 months ago, when I was trying to find LinkedIn posts to, publish for Women's Aerospace Network, and I was Googling and trying to go through AP Press Wire, which is like the standard press wire that press releases go out to. And I was trying to find articles related to women and aerospace, right? And there was like none. There was like one or two, maybe. But now you go out and Google that, and there's tons. And so that, at the end of the day, is what's important.
Yes, indeed. Even I have found so much of articles, so much of women involvement in space, and that's good to see. So moving on further, let's this Women in Aerospace Network to moving to the NASA's as a system engineer. So personally, I am very curious to work there, as well as I'm curious to know how the day look like over there. How do you work at NASA? How does your day start and how does it end? So that is something I'm always curious about, and I hope so the learners would also love to hear that.
Oh yeah, I can tell you a lot about that. So at I'm at the headquarters level. A lot of people don't know that there's a NASA headquarters. I didn't know that there was NASA headquarters before I signed on. I was working on a project with 𝗘𝗽𝗃 on NASA stuff, and I knew that as a project we reported to NASA Goddard. There's 10 different agencies, 10 different centers throughout the United States that NASA has. And so my project reported to one, to Goddard in Maryland. And when I got this job at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., I said, wait, there's a headquarters? And I would tell other people that I was leaving to go to headquarters, and they were like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And so it's pretty funny, but the reason why you don't know a lot about that there is a NASA headquarters is because at NASA headquarters, that's where it all starts, right? That's where the requirements start, and that's where the big agency goals start. And so there's not a lot of actual in the weeds technical work at headquarters. If you walk into headquarters and you say, Holly, give me a tour, I'm so excited to be here, I will tell you, great. It's mostly cubicles. It's still a very cool environment to be in, and it's very diverse. I tell people for WAN, oftentimes, every day I work with financial analysts, I work with graphic designers and social media managers. Like and project managers. It's very important that we recognize that there are so many diverse talents that are needed across the industry, right? Not just engineers, not just technical people. We need them just as much as we need writers to document things, right? To go out and get communication and buy-in from the people in order to get more money from the constituents for these NASA projects, right? So it's all a giant loop, and it takes much more than STEM. So a day in a life, at headquarters, since it is not as technical, what we do is we have a lot of project reviews. And so we talk with the centers and have, update statuses and goals and things like that. And at the centers is where all the technical stuff is happening. So when you see all the cool pictures online of all the cool NASA stuff and the rovers, that's out at JPL, and they are very talented people doing their thing. And we are here at headquarters to support them. I'm a contractor, so I'm not an actual civil servant, but I support the civil servants, and the civil servants, as well as myself, support the people on the ground floor building these incredible things and pushing humanity forward.
Oh, that's great. Even I was not able to distinguish between NASA headquarters and NASA. So now today I got to know about it. So is there any missions you have like contributed upon? Like what are those missions you have contributed as from your end at
So
NASA?
my role is within SCAN. So SCAN stands for Satellite Communications and Navigations. It's a program, more of a division though at NASA. And so there's a few different divisions at NASA. And so what SCAN is it is responsible for all of the giant satellite dishes that you see. And so all these satellite dishes, there's 3 big ones around the world, all placed so that we can get data anywhere when satellites are anywhere out in outer space. And these 3 satellite dishes are the size of an entire football field. It's massive, right? There's one in California, one in Spain, and one in, no, that's Madrid, and one in Australia. And so that's primarily what SCAN supports, is all of the communications with all of the 100+ NASA missions that are currently out in orbit, Voyager, all the way, deep space, billions of miles away, everything down to the James Webb, everything down to, cube satellites that students put out. And in addition to the giant dishes, there's also many smaller dishes, antenna dishes all around the world as well. And so that's what SCAN does, and that's the program that I support.
Yes, As you mentioned about the cube satellites, I was going through one of your podcasts and I heard that you took a drop in your master's. So at that time, like usually as an youth, as an BTech ongoing student, we have a lot of doubt. We doubt ourselves whether that startup will work or not. So how at that time, how did you actually thought of like this will definitely work and I will take a dropout for it? So how did that enthusiasm came for you?
Oh my gosh. No, there was no 100% let me drop out of my master's program and try to get a really good job. There is no guarantee that it was going to work. It was the scariest time, one of the scariest decisions I've ever made. But the key is that the scariest decisions ever made in my life are usually always the best ones, the ones that have the bigger the risk, the better the turnout, and if not, the better the lesson. So it's like it's the scariest thing in the world, but the bigger the risk you take, the better. But at the same time, though, you have to follow your gut, right? So if there's something that you feel that you know so inherently, right, and you know it's the right decision, no matter how scared you are, you have to take that jump.
Yeah, that's really true. Even I believe that in my life also, I thought of like taking a drop to, uh, you know, getting a better college. But what I believe was if I take that drop, then it will be like I will waste that year particularly. That's what's going on in our mind. So I was like, let's join any college and let's go on with whatever challenges comes. So be it any college. So that's what I got reminded by your dropout as well. So when looking backwards, let's move on to some funny moments in your life. So as we grow on our age, we get mature and we started taking decision by thinking a lot. But there are some moments in our life where we look back and we were like, did we took that decision really? So we will be laughing on that this was such a funny moment or this was such a moment that really reminds us of the that moment. So is there any moment like that in your life, ma'am?
Oh my gosh. So many. So many. You have to fail forward is what I always say. And so just a recent example, we I got this editor-in-chief to come on for the second issue of the Women's Aerospace magazine, and she is amazing. She is passionate and brilliant. And as the leader, I was leading this thing, and it never occurred to me that maybe we should have a schedule, right? She asked me, all right, what date is the magazine launching? And I said, oh, well, it'll launch, September. And it never occurred to me to have an actual schedule, which is ridiculous because at my real job, that's what we do is we manage programs and projects and in addition to technical stuff, it's a lot of project management. And so the second issue it got pushed to it moved a couple of times. It got pushed from September to December to February, and then now it's launching, let's see, in April sometime. No, in May sometime. So it's gotten pushed quite a lot, but you know what? That is okay because as a leader, I'm able to reflect, and what doesn't bother me is that it got pushed. What bothers me is that I didn't communicate upfront beforehand proactively enough that the schedule is not a priority. And so there's just so many moments that I look back and I say like, okay, like I learned from that and it makes you a better person so that you can tackle the next thing and pull from those skills so much better.
Yes. That's really interesting to hear, ma'am. Then, if you are given another chance to start a business, like you already have this Women Aerospace Network, what will be the other startup or the business that you would like to, invest upon your ideas or invest upon finances? And if it's so, which one it would be and why?
That's a good question. So I identify very much as an entrepreneur, and I think that's one of the reasons why Women's Aerospace Network has done so well, because this isn't my first or 10th time trying to start a business or trying to start and lead a club or something like that. And so people look at it and they're like, whoa, you did so well. You pulled it out of thin air. And I was like, yeah, it was a lot of thin air and blood and sweat and learning. Right. And so when I went into Women's Aerospace Network, I was thinking about all the different things that we could do, all the different branches, right? I wanted to have a podcast. But for us, I started it and I learned that it didn't fit in with our financial model. And so I was starting things too soon and I learned. I also thought, oh, we can sell merchandise because people request every day for Women's Aerospace Network. They want merchandise, right? And so a long time ago, I was thinking, oh, maybe another business we could start one day would be an add-on, like a subscription box or something. And I've been trying to crunch the numbers and figure out how it would make sense where we could give quality merch and still churn a profit that would make it have a margin that it would be worth it. And I can't find one. So my point is that I used to have all of these different ideas, and I learned the best idea is to just focus on one thing. So I knew that and I learned my lesson, and then I had to learn my lesson again. Recently, within the last couple months, at Women's Aerospace Network, we've gotten really good at social media. Like that's been the last year. I've been learning how to pump out awesome content, and we've built out a great pipeline for it. And I said, wow, we have all this great stuff. There's a need. Other organizations want to do what we're doing. So why don't I just sell, services for social media since we have it good to go? And I learned my lesson really quick that it's better to focus on one thing. It was an absolute disaster. I lost 3 days of my time. I lost like $700 and I refunded like the customer on top of additional costs I incurred for our graphic designers. It was a disaster, but I learned a lot that it's always best to focus on one core thing for longer than think and then move on to other things. And the beauty in this is that through WAN, I've already had a hypothesis of what other businesses might work, and I've learned why I wouldn't do any of them. So as soon as I learn the next thing that I want to invest in and I want to form WAN into, I will definitely let you know.
Okay. So that means we have to be focused upon one thing which we are doing. So that's what the lesson I learned from this particular thing. And of course, we commit a lot of mistake. As you said, you yourself have committed a lot of mistakes, and we'll do learn from it. So what was that particular mistake that you would like to tell to the learners and the space enthusiasts that I have committed this mistake, this should not be committed, and a better way to, always have a set particular pathway to your life is this, and don't commit this mistake in further life. So what's that particular mistake?
Oh my gosh, I've made so many, so
I'll
many
just
mistakes.
just about the mistake in short.
Um, so this is something that I'm still learning and I'm still struggling with is my standards, because I knew this intellectually, but without practice, it's been really a struggle for me. So as a leader, I've read this recently, your organization and the people that you lead, your team, they will fall and follow the lowest standard that you have instead of the highest vision that you have. So me as a person, I am a super visionary. I can, inspire all day, back and forth, hit after hit after hit. But my standards have been typically low for what I do accept. And that is a disservice to the people I'm leading. That's a disservice to our audience, the people I want to serve, and to our teammates, and also myself. And so that is my biggest mistake, is not raising the standards and not feeling bad for raising those standards and holding out and doing what it takes to have those standards met.
Okay, that's great. That's really sounds too good, ma'am, about having high standards, and also as a curious people who are out there who see space out of their curiosity. They look at the stars, they look at the moon, and they are like seeing them this in a perspective of curiosity. But while coming to you as a NASA's headquarters system engineer, what extra perspective would you like to add to this curiosity? What is the different thing that you see other than the people who are curious, just curious about it, but you are having some work towards it. So you have to work upon it.
I'm so sorry. One more time. What was the question?
Yeah, the question was, how do you what extra perspective would you like to add upon to this people, like you actually work at NASA's headquarters, so you have a different perspective, and me as a space enthusiast, I look at from my curiosity perspective. So from the work end, what extra perspective would you like to add upon? Like, we do these kind of things, this is the extra. Being curious is more is enough, but you have to do these and all to reach the particular place you want to be. So what is that perspective you want to add?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a lot of tips for that. So I'm trying to figure out how to frame my thoughts. So in college, I felt like I was doing everything right. I was leading clubs, I got scholarships, I got, 4.0 GPA. I was doing all the right things. And what I found was that when I graduated, I wasn't getting offered the jobs that felt worth that I had invested so much time and energy into and worked so hard. It took me 6 years to graduate college. And when I graduated, I was just getting suboptimal offers. And that's why I dropped out of my master's program and decided to really hone in on how do you land a job that makes it worth it, so that what are the tactical steps that you have to take so that you're not just trying to reach to the stars with no actual plan. And so what I found, the biggest thing, to sum it up, is that an interview is all to get a job. The interview is all done before the key to winning an interview is done way before the actual interview. And so if you show up to an interview and you're nervous and you're trying to prove yourself and you're nervously talking, trying to showcase your skills, that means that you didn't do enough preparing beforehand and you've already lost the interview. When you show up to an interview, somebody should know everything about you on a silver platter. That's how you should handle yourself. And so what I'm talking about is a word that a lot of people, especially tech-oriented people, steer away from. It's personal branding. It's having a portfolio showing all of the projects that you've done, and not just with words, but with images, having pictures of yourself up there. Because what you're doing is having a one-sided relationship with the interviewer. So when we read a book, right, we're seeing images in our head of the characters. We're building an emotional connection with the characters, even though they're just words on a page. They aren't real people. They don't even exist. They don't know that we have these feelings towards them. And that's the exact tactics that you want to take with an interviewer. You want to show up to the interview and have them already know that you are the right person for the job. And you do that through having a portfolio. You do that through having your LinkedIn, all decked out and having all the skills showcased ahead of time so that you walk into the interview and you say, and it's not like they're not trying to suss anything out. You're just there as a cherry on top. They're making sure that it's a fit and that they'll like to work with you. And it's no longer skills based. Because skills are transferable. Anybody can learn skills, but nobody will have the communication that you have. Nobody will have the personality that you have. That is irreplaceable. And so when people ask me, what are the tactical skills? What are the tech skills? What books do you need to read to get no, not what books. What technology stacks do you need to get into NASA? And those are the wrong questions. The right questions are, what do I need to do to prove that I can do any job despite what tools they give me, despite what tech stacks they give me? Because those are all replaceable. When I interview people, if they ask me what tools they're going to use, it's an immediate disqualifier. That for me, for Women's Aerospace Network. And so raising your level to an ownership level and getting away from just task-based tools, that is how you get there. That is how you reach for the stars.
So I guess so. The one who are applying for Women Aerospace Network should see this first and then go for the interview. Okay, so we have all.
Yes, please.
Yes. So we have almost come to the end of the podcast, but before letting you go, I would like to, of course, I ask this in every podcast so that people, if they see at the starting, at the ending, they get some values in the whole summary of it. So what is that one advice that you would like to give to all the learners, space enthusiasts, youths, all out there who are watching this podcast and who are looking up into the stars and the skies and thinking of joining NASA or any of the space agency which they want? So what is that one advice?
It would be, you can be in aerospace and part of the aerospace industry and work at the places that you want to work without going for a STEM degree. Is that there's the trifecta of your life's purpose is what you're passionate about. That's one of the things, right? And so we absolutely need that. And if you want to be, a cop in the aerospace industry, right? There are possibilities for that. Whether it's a security guard or right if you're still in school and you're trying to look at your career, right? There are quite literally paths being forged right now that don't exist yet. And so, I talk with people who are quite literally paving their own way for their entire country in the aerospace industry and creating new roles and new things that have never been there before. And by the time most of your listeners graduate from college, there's going to be entirely new fields within aerospace. And the people who are leading those new subsets are going to be you, Prachi, and your listeners. And so if you don't know where you fit in aerospace and you want to do something that you don't see a lot of information on, that's because we need people like you who are putting in the work and actually creating those and pushing humanity towards a whole new thing that we've never seen before. And so it's frustrating being in aerospace because there aren't a lot of opportunities yet, because it's such a relatively new and fast growing industry. And so that means that we need people to stop being task doers, and people need to stop being followers and waiting for the information and waiting for the opportunities. We have to create our own opportunities. If you think, aerospace medicine on koalas is super interesting, right? Do it. You will be the expert in studying koalas in aerospace because nobody has ever done it before. And that is something that is incredibly valuable and powerful and will make a name for yourself. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to say. My message is, go out, do it, become the expert in your field, no matter what it is.
That's such a great message, ma'am. And I hope so. I'm really thankful for you to be on this podcast with me for having such a discussion. There were some time when you were not able to understand my question, and it's quite fine, okay. But I hope so. I didn't took your much time, and we had a great conversation. And thanks for being over here. We'll definitely learn a lot from you, ma'am, and from all the others, and we'll make it forward.
Thank you, Prachi. You have an awesome podcast.
Thank you so much, ma'am. See you there. Bye.
Bye.